Morning, everybody. I've asked Tony Snappy to come here and open us up with a prayer this morning. He started praying with us years ago. And today's my last meeting. It's an honor to be able to come in here and pray. And thank you so much for doing that.
Let's pray together, guys. Lord, we're very grateful for this day. Thank you for this beautiful weather you blessed us with. And Lord, we just want to recognize that everything that we do, Lord, and every good and perfect gift comes from your hand. Lord, we thank you for these men and women that serve on this airport authority. We pray, Lord, that you'll bless them in the days ahead. Lord, they need your wisdom. We pray for that today, Lord. You'll give them your wisdom. And everything that we do, Lord, we'll honor and glorify you as we work together to make this county a great place for our families and, Lord, for our children, our grandchildren. Lord, we thank you for Calvin and his leadership. Continue to bless him and his health. And, Lord, we just lay this meeting in your hands in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you so much, Charles. Appreciate you, buddy. Okay, welcome everybody. We got any elected officials. I see Vernon back there. Thank you, Vernon. There's Dave, Carmichael. Morning. Morning, guys. Thank y'all for coming. We got a new board member, Stacy Handy. He's coming on from the chamber. Dave, why don't you stand up and just give us a little bio and you can tell us a little bit about you.
Put me on the spot or anything.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning. Thank you so much. I'm very, very excited to take the position of president of the Paulding Chamber. Been a part of this community for 11 years. Previously had a background in banking, so I had worked in the area and just very excited. I've been a previous board member with the chamber and have been employed there for 3 years. So just very excited to bring change and improvement to our business community.
Thank you so much. Anybody want to hear the minutes from last month, the 19th of October?
Make a motion to approve.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to look over the financial statement? Anybody got any questions?
Move to approve.
Wait a minute, Ellis, you ain't got a question about this? You gonna let me go out without a question on the financial statement?
I've already looked at it. It looks fine to me. I'll second it.
All right, need a second.
He did it.
Okay. All right, all in favor? All righty. All right, Terry.
Okay. So our income is the same for this month at $3,000 in total rental income for the airport authority. We now have 20 aircraft on the field. And next month, the big announcement is we have a Beechjet 400 that is planning to come to Paulding County starting in January. And that's really big for us because that's a multi-million-dollar jet which will bring the tax base with it. They're moving from PDK. They'll buy lots of fuel, so that'll be good for the FBO. So this is the kind of news that we're hoping to present on a regular basis. The fuel flowage into the fuel tanks for the FY is 44,754 gallons for the year. So we want that to be 1,000 gallons a day. We've got to multiply that by about 3 or 4, and we'll be there. So we're making progress. The thing I want to point out, though, in my report is I'm going to focus for a minute on the things that have happened at the airport that are non-aviation related over the past 3 or 4 months. And we've talked about it individually when various special use permits come to us and that sort of thing. But it's a lot more impressive, I think, if you see it all at one time. So since August 8th, we have had 3 fire department training sessions there in the terminal building. The Paulding County Emergency Management used it on September 20th. We had 3 different commercial film shoots, which resulted in income actually coming into the airport. I'll say a word about that in just a minute. We had a Hiram High School airport tour. We had the Goldwing motorcycle training where they used the part of the infield to set up a track. They brought in professional trainers, and this was done for insurance purposes for people who are members of that organization. The Paulding County Bar Association used our conference room one day to provide free assistance to to the firemen, was it firemen and police or just firemen? Public safety, anybody in public safety for will preparation. So they could come in and get free advice if they were a member of our public safety population here in the county. The Children's Cabinet Volunteer Swearing-In Ceremony was held in the Terminal Building. Probably the largest single event that we had was the STEM Expo that the Paulding County High School put on. That was a very successful event on October 21st. We had another film shoot, the MacGyver still shot on October 28th. We had a masquerade ball. I hope all of y'all were there, but I didn't recognize you in your mask. On October 29th, we had the 5K charity run. On November 12th, every first and third Fridays, we have the West Georgia networking that's there. And in December, this list was written before this last event that I thought about, but in December, we had the National Guard come in and they used our facilities for Family Day, and they actually brought in some H-60s. They did some parachute demonstration drops, and then they used the facility to prepare a meal and feed the servicemen and their families. And it was like a graduation ceremony, I guess, if you will, for them. And just a real good time for them, and we were able to provide the facility for that. Now, as you know, for any governmental entity in Paulding County, and for any nonprofit entity, we don't charge for the facilities that we have. So most of these were non-paying events. So they don't generate income for the airport, but they do provide infrastructure for the county that is available for just a wide array, as you can see, of things. And again, this is just since August 8th, so this is really our last quarter of activity that we've done there at the airport. So if you drive by and you think there's not a whole lot going on there, you need to look under the hood a little closer and see what all of the events are that are taking place. So it's been a really busy 6 months for us in this FY. We're really excited about what we've been able to accomplish and looking forward to what the new year is going to bring for us. Any questions on any of that?
So how many total events was that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and some of them are repeat events like the West Georgia networking. So on average, at least one event a week.
A lot of goodwill.
It is a lot of goodwill.
This bar thing, was that, why was that held up there?
Because we've got the facilities to do it in.
Okay.
It was actually scheduled for somewhere else, and we had to.
Right.
give them
At the
a place
last
to
minute,
rest.
they couldn't do it where they were going to have it, so we have the facilities, and
Gotcha.
we're happy to make that available for them.
Okay, good stuff, Terry. Appreciate that, buddy. Okay, it's time to renew Terry's contract, extended to June the 30th, 2017, with a $10,000 limit on his spending.
Can I vote no on this one?
Yeah, you don't get a vote.
Oh,
Sorry, buddy. But I've had no problems with Terry. I've been involved with him deeply here for the last 4 or 5 months, and enjoy working with him. And well, you know, it's open for debate. Somebody's got somebody that they're interested in looking at. Now's the time to do it before we renew Terry, because that's 6 months renewal. Has anybody got any questions for Terry?
I think he's done a fine job. Very pleased with what he has done.
Okay. All right, then I need a motion to approve. Nobody's got any objections?
Make a motion to approve.
Need a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
We're going to do this. All right, motion to approve 2017 scheduled board of directors meeting date for year 2017. Okay, has everybody had a chance to study that and those dates work for everybody? Does that end up being the third Wednesday of the month like it is now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I move to approve.
Need a second? Thank you, Robert. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Gary, won't you explain this to us, and then we'll get somebody to make this motion.
Okay, this one's going to take a few minutes, and so I'm going to ask that you indulge me for a few minutes here. This will be probably the most important piece of business that we've discussed in this FY.
Okay.
And normally, as you know, when we have discussions on real estate and contracts and so forth, we do that in closed session. And so the public doesn't get to see the interaction and hear the explanation and so forth. This particular motion deals with all of the business relationships between the IBA and the Paulding County Airport Authority. And since those are both public entities, and since every aspect of the business between these two organizations is a matter of public record, I felt that it would be appropriate that we have this discussion in public. I have written this and submitted it to both the chairmen and asked that the motion and the exact wording be put on both agendas, because if you're going to pass this, it's important that the wording be the same between the two agendas. So if you want to make a mod to this motion, we need to remember, or you need to be remembered, or remember to make the same modification to the motion later on today in the IBA meeting, because these are married up together. I want to start with the very last sentence and talk about the purpose of this, and then I want to come back and talk about the thought process that went into it, and then I want to talk about the financial analysis that I've done to defend the numbers that we're putting down here. So the last sentence says, and removes the IBA from any management responsibility or equity position in the Paulding Northwest Atlanta Airport. So the purpose of this motion, I have called it the divorce settlement with Tom, and Tom's been working with me on making sure we've got everything in it that we need. But the purpose of this motion is to separate the business between the IBA and the Airport Authority going forward. Now, a few words about that. Both of these entities are public entities. So what we're really doing is we're making a ledger entry change to move responsibility of pieces of infrastructure from one government body to another. So it's not quite the same as if we were selling this to a third party, where we would need to be much more concerned about, are we transferring public money to the private sector? We are moving public assets from one public governmental entity to what, in my opinion, is a more appropriate governmental entity that is better equipped to oversee and be managerially responsible for the assets that are on the property there. So that's that part of the background. Now, what is it exactly that we're transferring? I think there's a little bit of a misconception on some people's part that the Airport Authority is buying buildings from the IBA. That is not the case. The business arrangement is that the IBA has taken 20-year lease agreements with the Airport Authority, and they have done improvements on that Airport Authority property, and at the end of that lease agreement, those improvements return to the Airport Authority. So all we have to do is wait, and I'll tell you what the time periods are on each of these three pieces in just a minute, but all we have to do is wait for a certain number of years, and the motion that we're putting on the table automatically happens anyway. We're just accelerating the buyout of the existing lease agreements so that we can properly return these assets to the Airport Authority so that they can be responsible for managing them instead of the IBA. So what are the three assets? We're talking about the terminal building, the main terminal building, which sits on airport property and is an improvement that was built by the IBA using mostly publicly funded money from the state of Georgia. Okay? That lease was signed in 2007, so believe it or not, we're already halfway through that lease. So we're talking about buying out the last half of the terminal building. The fuel farm has 13 years remaining, also built by public money, not county money, for about 90% of it anyway. And then the hangar lease dates back to late 2010, And so we have 14 years remaining on the hangar.
That's the corporate hangar.
That's the corporate hangar, the big.
Not to be confused with the privately operated commercial.
Correct.
hangars.
The big block of T hangars is owned by an outside private company and is a completely separate deal. So we're talking about the big corporate hangar, the fuel farm, and the terminal building. And we're talking about buying out those 3 leases, okay? Now let's look at the income that the IBA recognizes today from those 3 assets. They get $850 a month from rental of office space in the terminal building. They get $1,500 a month from our FBO contract, just the FBO contract itself. And they get $1,500 a month from the Paulden Jet Center for the fuel farm. So that's a grand total of $3,850 a month that the IBA is recognizing as income on these 3 pieces of infrastructure. Now let's look at the outflow. So on those 3 pieces of infrastructure, because they're public buildings and because they're open to the public, there are certain inspections and maintenance and so forth that has to take place. I haven't written down all of it, but I'm going to give you some examples. There are over 20 fire extinguishers in the terminal that have to be inspected every year. The sprinkler system, the fire hydrants, the elevator, the emergency generator, the hangar building, fire suppression, water pump. The list goes on the things that have to be inspected annually. And thank you, Boyd, the IBA is paying all of those expenses today because those are listed on your ledger sheet. The power bills. The power bills are very complicated because, for example, there's a power meter on the sign out at 278. And that sign at 278 on Airport Parkway, am I correct, that's paid for by the IBA, right? Yeah. So the IBA is illuminating the sign that comes in on the property. That was done in the beginning, I believe, because at that time when the sign was put up, that was going to be the entrance to the industrial park that was going to be on the backside of the property, and it made sense 10 years ago or 8 years ago when it was done. But today, the only thing on Airport Parkway is the airport, and that sign and everything from that sign to the backside of the property, in my opinion, should be managed by the airport authority, and therefore the power bills, the street lights, the parking lot lights, the gas bill for the big hangar to keep it from freezing in the wintertime to protect the sprinkler system. All of that should transfer with this deal that we're talking about. There's also a $130,000 liability that's hanging over the head of whoever has the big hangar because there's a disagreement and has been since the building was built over the floor finish. And that has held up payment of the last invoice. And if we vote on this motion, this is where Boyd is sitting there thinking, yeah, this UGA boy got the better part of this tech guy this time because that liability would transfer to the airport authority and it removes it from the books of the IBA. So you need to think about that. And you need to ask me questions if you've got questions on that. Because all of the liability, insurance, we pay $1,000 a month roughly in insurance for these 3 pieces of infrastructure. When you add all of that up, the IBA is losing money on these 3 assets every month. Now, why would the airport authority want to take it on? The answer is because we are now to the point where we're ready to start leasing the big hangar. And if we're going to start leasing the big hangar, and we've got a couple of minor customers in there now that don't really amount to a whole lot financially, but we've got this big jet coming in January, and according to our price sheet that was approved back in July, I believe it was, that jet will pay us $740 a month in income, rental income, plus whatever fuel it burns, plus whatever services they require from the FBO. So it will be a nice asset for us to have, but we're in a legal limbo of not really being able to lease a building as the airport authority that technically belongs to the IBA. So the IBA is losing money on these pieces of infrastructure every month and will for the next 15 years. And what I'm proposing is that instead we pay $5,000 a month to the airport or to the IBA for 20 years for a total of $1.2 million. And it is not an exact science. I'll be the first one to sit here and tell you we don't know. For example, last month, Boyd and the IBA had to write a check for almost $2,000 to do repair to the digital control system on the fuel farm. And those are things that you can't predict. We had to do a major repair on the fire alarm system in the big hangar. IBA paid that because right now it's their fire alarm system. These are unpredictable costs going forward, but the liability and the management responsibility of the entire infrastructure on the airport, in my opinion, should rest with the airport authority. And again, we're really talking about a ledger transfer here from one government entity to the other. And so I don't believe it's necessary to have it mathematically accurate to the third decimal place, but I do think we need to make sure that it makes financial sense for both organizations. I believe the airport authority is positioned that we can carry this debt load for the next 20 years. We're going to be saddled with this anyway, starting in about 10 years when the terminal building becomes our responsibility. And also, by the way, all of the leases, the tenant leases that currently reside with the IBA will also move with this motion. So the airport authority will become the sole owner and responsible party for all tenant leases. So as we talk about, for example, modifications that we need to make to the FBO contract, because it's been almost 10 years since we signed that contract, and there are some adjustments that need to be made to it, it's really the airport authority who should be negotiating with the FBO, not the IBA. So this is not all about the really clever airport authority guys trying to take advantage of the slightly slower, innocent IBO or IBA members, because you're all the same guys. It's about transferring the responsibility to where it makes the most sense moving forward, so that the airport authority is responsible for airport management and the IBA can be responsible for developing industry in Paulding County. Very long explanation, and I apologize for it, but please ask me all the questions that you might have about this going forward.
Well, me and Boyd and Terry's been working on this deal for what, 3 months, 4 months? And I think it makes perfect sense for us to buy out this note from the industrial authority, and that's basically what we're doing. And then it gives us some more incentive to do better up there also, to grow this airport corporately and privately. So I'm all for this thing, and I hope y'all get on board with it too, because it's about time that we do this. And it's going to strap the airport to a lot of debt. It really is. But at the end of the day, you know, you're nothing without a little debt up there, because it does motivate you to get out here and hustle and push this airport, knowing that we don't have a Godfather Boyd to look after us, you know. So, but I'm all about this deal here, and hopefully we'll debate on it. Last week when Terry got this thing finally finished up, I wanted to get this done before I do leave this airport authority. So, anybody got any questions for Terry?
I think my concern is the airport right now is moving in a great direction, really positive direction. It's just, I would like to see it a little bit longer to see if we're going to keep generating these funds in order to be able to pay back this $5,000 per month. That's a real concern of mine right now.
Okay, so let me address that. So we do get the income. The income that's being generated on the property does come in this deal. So we get $3,800 additional income into the airport to help offset this cost. We do have 4 lease agreements now signed and ready to go in the big hangar, and so that's going to generate another roughly $2,000 in income in already signed leases. So it doesn't quite get us there, but it gets us really, really close. And I think, again, it's, as Calvin said, now my neck's on the line. You know, before I could just say to Yolanda, send that bill over to Boyd and tell him thank you when he gets it. But now it all becomes whoever your future airport director's responsibility is to make sure we're generating enough income to pay these bills. So you're right, there's additional risk that we're taking on here, but I think it's a positive thing for us to do. And it really just clears up a whole lot of issues. I can't tell you how many times a day I have to stop and think, is that IBA or is that Airport Authority? Do I pay that or does Boyd pay that? And now the answer will be, if it's inside that sign at Airport Parkway, Yolanda doesn't have to ask a question. She knows it belongs to us. And that's actually a huge benefit, in my opinion, for us going forward.
Well, Terry, how do you feel about, I know you're going to be the interim till, was it June, July? June the 30th. At some point, if it is you, we have got to be able to pay a permanent airport director. I mean, I think we're growing enough that we need that. And so, see, that's another concern.
Well, the advantage you've got right now is you're getting a permanent full-time guy for half-time pay, so that's working out pretty good at the moment.
I know it, and
so
we
financially,
appreciate
we're
that.
doing okay.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
It's also an incentive to grow the airport
Yeah,
for that person.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
that's exactly right. That's our, mine, Boyd, and Terry's driving force around here. It puts all the pressure on Terry. And, you know, and that's a good thing because you learn more by defeats than you do victories. And and I think Terry has done an excellent job doing what he has done so far. And he loves to negotiate, and I love that about him. And so, any more questions?
Well, you know, we got limited funds, and what concerns me is all these unforeseen conditions out there, these breakdowns and things that the IBA's been paying. I don't know if we're going to be able to afford to do all that.
So here's a dirty little secret. The IBA doesn't have a whole lot more money than we do. So you're really just shifting the public risk from one organization to another. You know, there's no more risk in this business model than there is in the other. It's just a question of who owns that risk. Is it the IBA or the Airport Authority? And Boyd, you're better positioned to answer that than I am.
I know we've touched on this in closed session before, but I wished we had studied this a little further before we just come to a meeting and it's put on the agenda for a motion.
Well, it's been being studied for 3 months.
Yeah, but I know, but the other, you know, the typical member of the airport authority hasn't been in the loop, and I think we need to table this until we can study all the specifics of it.
I agree with Ellis about that.
Did you not send a copy out last week?
Well, we got a copy of this agenda, but we don't have, I'd like to see a spreadsheet, something like a financial sheet, what's coming in, what's going out, and the properties, and we don't work up here full time, so we need to get acclimated to exactly what we're doing.
And Terry, I mean, I told you every time I see you, I think you're doing a great job, but at some point, you're going to deserve to be paid for the job you're doing.
So do you want me to turn down the $750 a month lease?
I mean, what would it hurt to put it off to the next meeting?
You'll lose the customer.
January 1st, 21, but then.
And we really don't have the authority right now to bring that aircraft in because this board doesn't own the hangar.
Well, why can't that just be transferred when you do transfer? If and
Because
when
the
you do.
IBA can't manage property. It's specifically barred in their constitutional amendment.
What about the leases we already have out there?
Well, those are leases in whole. This is actually managing the property. This would be managing the building as a building that's being held out for rent. There's a technicality difference there.
Nothing new.
Well, I certainly do not want to lose that lease by any means, but I do agree that I think this should be taken for another month to give us, for all of us to, like Ellie said, to have a total breakdown of what is going on. Because I know for myself, about the only thing I hear is when I get the agenda once a month. The only person that contacts me about anything, or just when Yolanda sends out the agenda. And that's about about the extent of my knowledge. Obviously, there are members here that are, well-rounded in everything that's going on, but some of us, we're just not in that loop. And I don't mean any offense about that. We're just not. Until we get to these meetings, and then it makes it really hard to make what you feel like is an intelligent decision on what you're doing. It's a big responsibility, huge.
Well, I want to address part of that. I don't know who that's directed towards or not, but talking about who knows what, we have dealt basically as chair, and I've had not a lot of discussion, but in principle and gaining information from Terry. But if you're taking all of this and discussing it either separately or as a whole, you basically have created a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So that's why it's been limited basically to the chairs of each of the two boards to get the motion out to you. And I think it's probably proper that we go into executive session with some legal questions before we take further action.
Okay.
And I would move to go into executive session for real estate personnel litigation.
No disrespect for anybody that's not informed here, but the fact of it is, everybody that sits on this board's got every opportunity to get involved with Terry and go up there and sit down and talk to him anytime you want to. And that's what I have to do. I have to do that.
You're right, and I fall short of doing that, and I'm sorry. But before we go into an executive session, do we have some members of the public that could speak and with any concerns, or is it just us that can speak about this?
It's up to y'all.
It's up to the chair.
No, I think we need to go ahead and let's make this other motion first. Yes, we need David, I need a motion to approve, David.
So we got a motion to go into executive session, so you won't have to do that.
All right. Well, it's out of order, so we'll go ahead and do that anyway. Need a motion to go into executive session.
It's been
Real
moved.
estate, personal and litigation.
That was moved in second.
And all in favor?
We'll be.
I move to return to regular session, report no action taken in executive session.
Need a second.
Second.
Okay. We gotta need a motion here.
So moved.
Hold on just a second there, David. We skipped David Hunsucker we're having to rehire him because we've got another lawsuit about the fence and a rejection from the FAA to move forward with it. So we need to keep this David Hunsucker on board because he's our only fence that we got out there protecting against wildlife. So Terry, wants you to explain to him, because me and you worked this deal out with him and explain that, would you?
All right.
We'll get a motion.
So a lot of y'all know David. He's a local business owner and a professional hunter, and has been providing wildlife mitigation services for the airport for some time now. And so this contract is for the calendar year 2017. And the particulars of the contract are, number one, we're going to pay him $100 a month for record-keeping, reporting, and advising me on wildlife mitigation. And we're going to pay him $50 for what I'm calling a controlled hunt. A controlled hunt is a hunt that happens outside of the normal rules and regulations for DNR, for sportsman hunting. So if David is on the property, and David will be the only person who's authorized on the property to conduct hunts, but if he's conducting those hunts in accordance with DNR normal hunting regulations, we don't pay him, okay? He's doing that as a sportsman. He's ensuring that he's licensed, equipped, trained, all of those kind of things. And he has permission to be on the property to hunt. However, if he's operating under the authority of the USDA permit, wildlife mitigation permit, part of that permit says that he has to be an employee of the authority who holds the permit. So that's why this agreement is necessary, is to make him an employee. So we're not paying him to hunt, we're paying him to execute the rights and privileges that we have under the USDA permit to keep the runway protected until such time as we can get a fence put up around the property. So that's what this is, and I emailed y'all the full details.
And what is the holdup in getting the fence?
The holdup in getting the fence is we have to have a category exception to the environmental assessment from HEL. The environmental assessment was supposed to be expedited 2 years ago. The FAA ultimately has responsibility for final approval on a couple of key points on the environmental assessment. They have not made those determinations yet. That's why, as you recall, we had to go back and do a supplemental to our environmental contract with Michael Baker. Cost us another $189,000 that we're having to pay to answer all of the public comments and concerns that were submitted in the November of last year meeting. And so the Georgia DOT felt that it was within their purview to do a categorical exception to that EA for purposes of wildlife mitigation, safety, other concerns. And they were moving forward. It was their money, remember, it was Georgia DOT money, not FAA money. But ultimately, because we're an airport, the FAA has final approval. And so they have decided to wait. I can't tell you for how long, but they have not granted that Cat X as of today. So as of where we sit right now today, we do not have the environmental permit that we need to move forward with the fence.
Was there an objection to that?
There was an exception filed by attorneys that felt that it was in violation of the agreement that had been made as a settlement of one of the other legal cases. So yes.
And the danger of wildlife on the runway is
real,
human life
documented.
and property destruction. All right, with that, in an effort to try to protect the flying public and the property up there, I move to renew the contract with David Hunsaker.
Are we renewing it, or is this actually?
This is a new contract,
Well,
Have we ever had a contract with him before?
not that I can find.
I move to create a contract, approve a contract.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All righty. Okay.
Y'all skipped the motion that we went into executive session on, by the way.
The legal by motion.
Oh, yeah, we did.
I'll make that motion.
All righty. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I'm still too worried about the airport authority being able to pay this money back. I'm sorry.
Is that a nay or an
It's
abstention?
a nay. Or an extension.
So one
Can I have
opposed?
an extension?
One opposed?
Can I have an extension?
I don't know, it's up to the chair.
Well, we're gonna call for a vote if the
Well, you
majority.
got a motion and you got the vote, so just didn't know how to record that one.
Okay, just.
I don't know, Tom.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, you had a motion on the floor and a second, and you asked for a vote, so 6 people, I counted 6 voted for, and then, so you need to ask if anybody's opposed.
Is anybody opposed?
I am Calvin.
So then it would be 6-1, that motion would pass 6-1.
6-1. Motion so passes.
And then Boyd, I need you to make the exact same motion in order for it to be effective in the IPA meeting.
All righty. Tom?
Yes, Yolanda called me last week and asked me to prepare resolutions for both you and Chairman Austin honoring service, and I did that, but I neglected to bring them with me this morning, so I will not be reading them today. But I would ask the board to approve the adoption of the resolution. I'll bring them with me at the little reception that they're having sometime today, and I will be happy to read them at that point in time. So
I move to approve by unanimous consent.
A second.
All in favor? All right, I got one more little thing I want to do for the airport authority and the airport. You know, I would always like to give you guys a gift every year at Christmas this time, and, you know, just appreciation for your service. But this year, I thought I'd do something for the airport because I've been going up there for a long time since it was construction, and I've never witnessed a Bible there. So I'm going to present the airport with a Bible this morning. And Yolanda, I want you to put it where the pilots can get to it and the people coming up there can get to it. And because it's been an honor to me to serve, and it's all about God. You know, we've always depended on God to get us through the tornado, the lightning strikes, and He's tested us every way possible to get through these issues. And you know, life is always going to be about peaks and valleys. And you know, and we've learned a lot by our mistakes. We have, and that's where you do learn. Victories never learn you anything, but mistakes learn you tons. So, and I've learned a lot through all this, and I'm just so proud to be able to serve and to know you guys and to be with you. But and you know, and I just want God to stay in this airport authority. I want Him to stay in this airport, and there He is calling you right now.
There's a Bible there.
What?
There is a Bible there.
Well, I've never witnessed it, and I've looked for it, so, but,
Right.
Mr. Carter, if you don't mind, just let me finish here.
Sure.
But anyway, I just love all you guys, and I'll be still in the background supporting this airport, helping it grow as much as I can, believe me, because it is a passion of mine. But anyway, I'm going to present this to Yolanda, for everybody to look at. I actually got my wife to help me find this Bible because it's mostly got a lot of pictures in it. So I like pictures. So anyway, but anyway, pass that down, Yolanda. I just expect you to put it there somewhere for me and the airport authority because we need to keep our eyes on God through all this. So
Thank you,
anyway, it's been a pleasure. Any comments or questions?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
And then we didn't recognize David for his time served.
Oh, look, I'm getting a kick in the ass, I'm fine.
There'll be a resolution as well. Y'all approve the resolutions,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, so
Well, I understand that, but in public, I mean, you know, at this meeting, I think we should be recognized for all the
Absolutely. Okay. Then motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?